Hey y'all, it's Savannah and this is Savannah Says. So I'm here to talk about a series that I just read, well, the first book in a series that I just read that I'm excited to talk about. And that series is called The Plated Prisoner by Raven Kennedy. And the first book in the series is called Gild. I read this a few weeks ago. Currently there's 3 books out and the 4th is coming out, I think, in like 2 weeks. There's supposed to be a 5th book and I think it's coming out, I assume, later this year. I can't imagine it'd be next year, but it's supposed to be a 5-book series. 3 are out, 4 is coming out in 2 weeks, and the 5th one is TBD. This is a series which is basically set on a retelling of the King Midas fairy tale. If you're unfamiliar with King Midas, basically everything he touches turns to gold. And I'm gonna be real, I'm not really familiar with the fairy tale besides the fact that everything he touches turns gold. Like, I know that part of it, but I don't know like the details of the fairy tale. I'm going to assume that touching gold made him greedy. I'm gonna make that assumption. So I think that the less you know about this book, the more enjoyable it is, because I did not know anything about this book. All I know was that it literally was a retelling of the Midas fairy tale and that it involved fae. Y'all know I love fae. I love reading a book that's got fae in it, because that automatically means there's a romance and that automatically means there will be magic, okay? So I was like, great, Midas, fae, magic, I'm sold. I did not get what I thought I was going to get, but that made it enjoyable to me. That made it enjoyable, and so I think that the less you know, the more enjoyable it'll be, besides those 3 things. But I will say that something you should know if you choose to read this is that if you have sensitivities or triggers surrounding sexual assault or rape, this book has that, and it's very graphic and on page and very detailed, and I wish I didn't have to read it, and I wish I would have known that before I read it, because I got to that section of the book and I was like, disturbed. And I'm not someone who has that sensitivity, but to me, I was disturbed. So if that's something that bothers you to any extent, I wouldn't say don't read it, because personally, to me, it was very evident that like that was the direction that the author was going in. I just didn't think it was going to be on page and detailed and described, but you can tell that it's coming. So I think that if anything that I say here or anything you see online interests you about this book, that you should still read it. Just skip that part. It's like the last 10% of the book, and it's, again, very obvious and evident when it's about to come up and when it's going to happen, so you don't ever get like blindsided by it. So in this book, you're following the main character. Her name is Arin, and she is Midas's gold-touched favored. The first thing you should know is that like pretty much all royalty in this story have magic. The only way you can be royal in this story is if you are magical in some way, because there are 6 kingdoms in this world, and then the head of every kingdom has magic, because again, that's the only way you can like retain power. So Midas is the king of the 6th kingdom. You have the villain of the story. His name is King Rot, and he is the king of the 5th kingdom. And then you have another king who's mentioned in the story. His name is King Falk, and he is the king of the 4th kingdom. So in the 6th kingdom, Midas has this harem, essentially. They're concubines. They're not really there. Like, they're not willing to be there. They're just there against their will, and that is their job. And they're called saddles, which I'm not really feeling that terminology, but they're called saddles. And Arin is the favored saddle, and she's the gold touch saddle because she's the only person who's gold. So this entire castle that they live in is gold, because King Midas touches things that turn to gold. And the special thing about Arin is that she is gold. Okay, her skin's gold, her hair's gold, everything about her is gold except the whites of her eyes. Like, her irises are gold, but her eyeballs are white, and like her teeth. So like she's literally gold. And usually living things cannot be turned into gold. They die, because obviously they tried that, I suppose, and they came to the conclusion that like you can't do it. But she's gold, and therefore she's special, and therefore no one can touch her except Midas. So she lives in a cage.
What did she say?
I know you're probably like, Savannah, why do you read all these fucked up romance stories? I don't know. This one's really not as bad as the other ones that I've read, but you know, she lives in a cage, and her cage extends the entire like top floor of the palace. So it's a big cage, and she basically just travels from room to room whenever she wants, but there's always bars. Okay, she's basically in prison, but no one is allowed to touch her except Midas, hence the cage. So she just kind of lives her life, you know, doing her thing. She kind of entertains herself because no one likes her, because the other concubines don't like her because she gets special treatment. The queen doesn't like her because Midas has a harem, understandable. And pretty much everyone else who doesn't know her is obsessed with her or like too interested in her because she's gold and she's alive. So she basically just has like a shitty life. The only person she would consider a friend is King Midas because he's the only person who talks to her, touches her, like literally human interaction. She's the only person he interacts with on that level. By proxy, I suppose she's like infatuated with him / in love with him. Like this is the person that she feels protected by because she came from like a really terrible life. She was like an orphan and she was like in basically child slavery. It's not really that, but it's the guy running the house where all these kids lived were working for him and the work was not always savory. So she had like a terrible past, and Midas basically found her when she was like 15, and I guess he was like 20. I don't know. They never say how old he is, but they're like relatively close-ish in age. So he finds her when she's like 15, and together they like travel from wherever they are to the sixth kingdom, and he basically comes to the kingdom and marries the queen because he's magical, and the queen of the sixth kingdom has no power. Basically means that she couldn't be the queen even though it was like her birthright. So he marries her, and because Arryn came with him and they had like a history, they were together for like years and years traveling and all that, she becomes like his favored concubine. That's her backstory, right? The premise of this book is that there is a war brewing between Midas, Falk, and King Rot, and basically Midas and Falk are trying to work together against King Rot because King Rot is the most powerful king in this world, this land, I suppose is a better word. And his power is that he can kill living things, which sounds like lame, but he can kill them from a distance. He does not have to be close. He doesn't have to touch it. He can basically just rot anything that's alive from the inside out, humans included. And so that has people afraid of him. But they don't like him, and his kingdom is in the middle of 4 and 6. Therefore, they want to get rid of him and absorb his land also because they want to get rid of him because he's powerful, right? King Rot's the main villain, and he's like OP. Midas can turn things to gold. Like, that's a cool power, and he kind of uses that to his advantage to like get people on his side by like making them rich. And King Falk is one of the people that he has helped become rich by giving him gold. King Falk's power is that he can duplicate things, but he can only duplicate inanimate objects. So Midas will like give him a shit ton of gold and he'll duplicate it and he's rich. So he's already got like a built-in ally. Yeah, the premise is that they're working together to get rid of King Rot, and King Falk is infatuated with Arryn because she's gold and he is a greedy man and he likes gold. And so he's in love with her, basically, or not in love with her. He's infatuated with her and wants to get with her, but because Midas won't let anyone touch her, that's kind of like contingent on their allyship to start this war. Is like, I want one night with her or I won't help you fight this battle. So Midas kind of allows that to happen, which Arryn is not happy about, obviously, because no one has touched her. And after like a night of chaos, basically King Falk ends up dead. I'd say that's a spoiler, and I guess that's kind of a spoiler, so I'll put a spoiler warning on that section, so I'm sorry. But after a night of chaos, he ends up dead. So yeah, Midas let that happen. Arryn is not pleased about it, and eventually through some mishaps one way or another, King Falk ends up dead, and Midas goes to his kingdom in order to like, I guess, help them grieve / absorb their land. Midas just wants to take over the land, okay? And now that he's got one king out of the way, by whatever circumstances he was killed, he's like, I don't really care. Like, it's above me. I'm just trying to take over this kingdom, right? So he goes to the kingdom and he sends for his little harem to come after him. So all the saddles are like traveling to meet him in this kingdom, but they have to travel through like this giant barren wasteland of snow. And along the way, because of course, as you do, they get captured by snow pirates. And that's pretty much the book. That's pretty much the book. This book is like a travel book. They're basically just traveling. And I would say it's like a character study. I think I would classify this book as a fantasy character study, because you're really just in Arryn's mind. Like, she's the only POV, and you're basically just like following her as she figures out what she wants for her life, how she feels about her life, how she would change her life if she had the power to change it, and what she like expects from Midas after, you know, like they have this whole history, and then he gives her to King Falk, and she's not cool with that, but they never really like rectify that because again, Folk ends up dead, and they end up having to travel to like his kingdom. So she doesn't really have a chance to ever like go there, have that talk with him. So this entire book is just her like breaking that down and sort of just like discovering herself, and like, can she trust him anymore? Even though where else will she go? Because she's gold. No one, you know, she's not really inconspicuous. You know what I'm saying? They end up with snow pirates, and this is where, so yes, the book has ended, but once they end up with the snow pirates, that is where like the rape scene happens. So that is like, they're clearly bad people. Yeah, that's when that scene happens. So if that's something that you are, again, uncomfortable with, I would just skip that last little chunk of the book. But definitely I would say this book was not what I was expecting. You know, it kind of ended on a cliffhanger. I was shook pretty much in every ending for every book of this series thus far. So I gave it 3 stars, which I know that I say everything is 3 stars, and that means that I liked it, but sometimes it means I didn't like it. But this time, I think I liked it. I think if you are into slow fantasy, like this book is a lot of world build. I think if you're into slow fantasy, like a lot of world building, a lot of, I don't want to say it's like a, oh, well, I've already said it, but it's basically a travel slash journey story, but it's setting the stage for like the later books. And you won't know that until you've read the later books. Like I didn't know that while I was reading it. So I was kind of like, when is the plot going to happen? But like, it's just a slow book. It's a slow burn. And if that is something you're into, I think you'll like this. I don't think that the main character was like my favorite main character, but I feel like I just don't ever like the main character. That's never my favorite person of the story. So I think for what it's worth, she's cool or whatever. You know, like there's some other characters who are in the book who I think are interesting. Yeah, I gave it 3 stars. I would say you should read it. They're all on Kindle Unlimited, which, I mean, that doesn't make them free, but they're free enough. They're good enough to read. It's about like 400 pages. Again, it's a good story. If you're into magic, it's definitely not what you're expecting. It's definitely not just like a straight retelling of that fairy tale. So if you're worried about that, I'm here to tell you that's not what you're gonna read. You're gonna be shook. So yeah, because I like to hear myself talk, I guess, I will eventually like do a whole thing where I like talk about the whole series as it is. I guess as it's either when it's complete or when it's close to being completed. So at least like I can just talk about like the plot and the character growth and like the character journey and all that. But yeah, I think the first book is a good book. Again, solid read. Just know what you're going into before you go into it, but also don't look up too many things, because part of what made this book so good to me was that like I didn't really know. I told you that the book was about Fae. I didn't really know it was about Fae. The synopsis of the book itself is like super vague. And so when I found out there was Fae, I was like, did they know that I was gonna pick this up? Like, they knew. And so I think you should know that part at least. But yeah, the less you know, the better it'll be. And yeah, let me know if you read it. Let me know if you enjoy it. I've already forced my sister to read it. Again, always my sister. She's the person that I can force these things on. So yeah, let me know your thoughts. Let me know how you feel. Let me know if you're interested or not. And I'll see y'all next time. Bye.